All right. One of you guys could let me know if you can see my screen.
I can.
Great. Thanks. So I know we're a minute early. Do we want to wait or you want me to just jump right in, Deb?
I say go ahead.
Okay. Great. So welcome everyone. This is Mark D. Crane. I'm going to be hosting the Import Data Doctor portion of today's session. Shout out your questions, I guess, is probably the easiest way if you've got questions. Um, I'll be happy to stop and answer them as best I can, or commit to getting you an answer after the fact. Um, and I'll periodically try and pause if I remember to ask if there's any questions. So what I thought I'd do today is just go through some examples of things I've run across with the Import Data Doctor and some suggestions on bringing that data into Creo and cleaning it up. And excuse me, while I set my teams to hopefully I won't get disturbed. There we go. All right. Um, so yeah, I'll go through some examples, things I've found that work for me. You know, the active repairing models is a little bit of a black box, but hopefully we can take a little of that mystery out of it today. A couple of things I do on the front end when you open up a file. So I just went out a couple days ago and found some examples off of GrabCAD and just pulled those in and found a few that were complex enough that actually had a couple issues. So let's do this other one first. So we'll grab this guy. So these are both step files. Typically, what I'll do if I don't know where the files are coming from or what system they're coming from, I'll let the software determine what the best accuracy is to use, as well as the units. And if I don't know what units were used in the authoring file, then I'll just not use a template and bring that data in. And by not using a template, it should bring it in at the units that the step file was created in. And then the second thing I'll do is not by not using a template is I'm not imposing an accuracy on the model. So if you go to your details, it should be by default, it's usually set to automatic for your model accuracy. And that basically means that if there is a published accuracy in the exported data, we try to match that accuracy when you bring it into Creo. So you generally get, I'll say generally, get better results, but sometimes messing around with accuracy in your model, your template, and then bringing data in can have some improved effects or worse effects. So it's a little bit of a guessing game, but I usually start with automatic and no template and let it come in however it does, however it can. I generally don't mess around with these other filters. You can set them if you want. For example, like there's some healing options to close gaps between surfaces and repair unsatisfied geometry. So I kind of prefer to do these internal to the repairing capabilities in IDD and Import Data Doctor. So, but you could check those off if you want. It may close up some of the gaps for you. So the first thing I do, as I mentioned, just use automatic and no template, and then import that file. I'll give this a second or two. So you'll if there is an issue and you've got your notification center turned on to look for validation failures, you'll get a notification. In this case, we do. Or if I pick on that, you'll see that it, gave me an issue in the model. You can, disable it if you want. You can go right into the import data doctor from here. You can look at the report. So it's basically telling us it couldn't solidify. Um, Again, I kind of like to interrogate it a little bit before I get going. Plus, I wanted to show a couple things here. So um, it's not always easy to find the spots where a model has an issue, especially when they're fairly complex, castings or something like this. Um, it's not always obvious where the issue is. So I usually work in wireframe, and that's going to show if you haven't changed your colors, I'm running kind of out of the box here. So my default colors are whatever, when I install Creo is what I'm looking at here. But I usually do a couple things. I'll go into the model settings for my appearance, system appearance, and I'll switch from the default to a dark theme. If I move that over, you can see it's going to show the black background, which helps. But the other thing I do is under my geometry colors, I switch quilt outer edges to something more contrasting. Because right now it's showing the purple edges are where there's a combined two surfaces that are adjacent and there's no issues. And if there's an issue, it's showing as a kind of a lighter shade of purple, which to me doesn't make a lot of sense because it makes it really hard to find those problem areas. So I switch it to something a little more contrasting, like yellow or white. And once you do that, you'll see hopefully that the problem areas kind of jump out at you a little bit. Now, one other thing I change, because right now I've got tangent edges turned to dimmed, which again makes it hard to see. So I'll go in and set my entity displays and go to my tangent edges and switch them from dimmed, which again is the default, back to solid. And I generally don't keep it, but now everything shows is either purple or yellow in the model. So again, this is just something I prefer to do. Shows me a little more obvious where my problem areas are. You can see them. It's kind of in the center of the model here. These two areas that I'm circling are two of the problem areas in this model. And so now it's easier to spin the model around and kind of identify where those problems are. Sometimes you get inverted, it looks like you're looking at the right side. And sometimes it helps if you go in and can pick on one of the edges of the problem areas and then maybe switch to shaded with edges. And then it's like, okay, now I got my bearings on this part where it's at. Now you can come in and kind of work on that particular area. But generally speaking, I'll stay in that wireframe mode to go in and do my kind of troubleshooting on these types of problems. Um, any question on the setup stuff? I don't know how many people are logged in right now, but um, again, if you came in a few minutes late and you have a question, just shout them out. I think you probably just have to take yourself off mute.
Yeah, I see 77 participants, so that's a good crowd.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a question queue somewhere in Zoom, or is just asking people to come off mute the best route?
There is a chat. Mark, did you want to ask that question?
Sure. I know we've had issues bringing in, say like intake manifolds. Some of our suppliers use NX and other software, but I've had a lot of issues trying to bring in some of the NX files. A lot of issues with endpoints not matching up.
Yeah.
Lot of surfaces that seem to have some inversions on them real quick. Right by the edge, you can't really see it until you start rotating, and then
Yeah.
it'll start fading out. And I'm wondering maybe if it's possible. You mentioned don't use templates when you bring your files in. We may be doing some of that. We've got like our start parts are all set up,
Yep.
and so we bring them into those. And I'm wondering if that's part of the issue.
It could be. I mean, it's certainly worth trying. I know I've had I don't know what your start parts are set up for, if absolute accuracy or how tight it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty tight because we've had a lot of issues in the past with our castings,
Yeah.
merging files, and so we just locked everything down to
Right.
I can't remember exactly what it is, like 4 or 5 decimal places,
Oh yeah. That's gonna
and
definitely
it's metric. So
oh yeah, that's definitely gonna wreak havoc on imported models if you got it
okay,
that tight and you're using a template.
okay,
Or I would guess it will. I
yeah, okay.
but can't say for a fact.
I know in the past it seems like things were working better, but just last year, 2 years, it seems like we've been having more issues, or at least I have. I know we
Mm,
got a couple other guys on, but I think most of their stuff comes out of Alias.
okay.
Actually, we have had issues with files coming out of Alias too, with the same type of thing where the edge conditions don't always match up real well.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, I would definitely start with trying to bring it in without a template and not
Okay.
imposing accuracy on it, and just see and leave it. Make sure you leave that set to automatic. That
Okay.
yeah, it's a
Okay.
easy thing to try, and you might find you get a little better results.
Okay. All right.
The other thing you can try, and I don't know if, I mean, you're getting these files from a supplier, I assume, or something like that, is see if they can give you the original NX data, because
Okay.
you can import that. It's definitely a different set of algorithms when you do an import on a native NX file.
Okay.
So that's something else you could try and see if you get better results that way.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yep, you bet. All right. Um, so let's take a look at how we might go about kind of resolving some of these problems. So again, this is a model that I've seen this happen quite a bit, where you get a surface or a model rather, and some of the surfaces get trimmed in the wrong direction. So like if I kind of query through here, well, let me release that. There we go. So if I kind of query through this model, you see I've got a surface there, and you can kind of tell that it's got some issues. It might be inside out here. Why it's picking the whole model on me here. Oh, sorry. I thought I already went into the import data doctor. All right, let me let me do that first. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the import data doctor. You go into your import feature if you haven't done this before, and edit the definition on the import feature, and then you'll find the import data doctor button inside of here. Okay, now that I'm in here, I can kind of query through my model a little easier. So, and I just, without picking anything, a lot of times I'll just move my mouse around and kind of just interrogate visually some of these surfaces. And you can see, usually the problems are typically at the endpoints of the surfaces. So you can see this one here has got some real issues. Um, this one that's got the yellow boundary is kind of a weird thing, but it happens occasionally that the surface got trimmed the wrong way. In other words, it should have kept this inside boundary as opposed to the outside boundary. Now, you can you can resolve that sometimes. I've had models where that was the only problem, and all I had to do was go in and delete the internal boundary. So if I wanted to try that, I know it doesn't exactly work on this model, but for example, I've got that surface highlighted right now. So I could come in and say, detach it. So now in my tree over here, topology tree, it's showing the quilt and that surface. And if I just hide the quilt for a minute, you can see that that surface is now kind of out there by itself. So I've kind of separated it from the overall quilt. And what you can do, you can see it's kind of a mess as well down here. And that's why I say I know this isn't going to work. But I have had it work where I can just come in and say, take an edge and just right click and say delete that. And what it does is it untrims that surface. So now if my only problem was this needed to get trimmed back to the other boundary, I could just bring back that other quilt. So let's bring it back. And then you can see now that I could use this curve and this back curve to trim that surface that's highlighted right now. But I know this doesn't work because this whole other area is kind of corrupted around it. So the other thing you need to do is kind of know what's going on with your model. In other words, this model is a pretty complex casting, but the area I'm really having problems with is a couple of rounds that blend together. So you got to kind of balance how much effort do I want into trying to move vertices and clean this thing up and trim surfaces versus let me just blow these two things away and rebuild a clean intersection of those two. So if I take that surface that we've got highlighted and this surface, one of the things you can do is an exclude. So when you do an exclude, it's kind of like a suppress. So it's temporarily removes it from this overall quilt and it puts it in this placeholder called exclude and it hides them. So now it's not being considered as part of the quilt anymore. So I could start to look at, I could always get them back if this approach I'm taking doesn't work. you can just right click on them and say include, and it'll put them back in. But now when I start to come in here and look at this, this looks pretty good down here. The rest of these surfaces. One thing I noticed on this part, because of when you get those weird singularities coming together in a corner, this curve is got split into multiple pieces over here. So this half of the boundary. So I usually grab both of those when I see those conditions and just say merge them together. And that's going to give me, one single curve here now. So when I go to patch in this boundary, it's got a nice clean vertex down here, one single curve. Otherwise, you end up with a little UV line here, just like when you build boundary blends inside when you're just modeling inside a Creo and there's multiple edges, it always builds a control point through that. So I usually take a look at my boundaries, make sure they're nice and clean, single curves, if it makes sense. And then you can come in and say, let's do a boundary blend. And I'm just going to say from here to here. And then I'll switch directions. Grab both of these. Maybe grab the vertex down here since I got it nice and clean now. And since these are rounds, I probably want them to be tangent. And then I'll just accept that. So now, hard to see here, but if I shade the model, I've got a nice clean end of my round features here that are coming together. But they're not part of the same quilt yet. So that's the next thing you need to do. So I've actually built a quilt out of that since it was two surfaces. So I got a quilt that I created, the quilt that was the original. Just pick them both and do a combine. And if I, had nice clean geometry, it's going to automatically merge up for me. And I usually collapse them down to one single quilt or one single body, depending on what you're working on here. In our case, it's a quilt. So that's the approach I would have taken on these. And again, it's mainly because you're dealing with something that's, I don't want to say it's insignificant to the overall model, but it is around, and sometimes it's easier to just kind of blow it away and rebuild it. Now, same problem over on this side, a little bit different. If I look at, let's just go in, it's that same untrimmed surface, and you can see this is the other problem surface. And if I exclude those, and then I kind of come down here, this one's got that same thing. It's the curve that got split here at this point. So I'm just going to merge those together. But this one's kind of wavy, and I may be able to use it the way it is, but that doesn't look right to me. So I'm going to try and fix that. And one of the ways I can fix that, there is no breaks in it. It's one single curve. So what you can do is I can come in and say, I want to split that curve at some point along the curve. So I just split it into two pieces. And then you can use this move vertex, where I can come in now and just kind of move this thing around and see what kind of influence that has on my model. So that's about where it was before. Just by pulling that back just a little bit, moving it a little bit, I can kind of clean up, make that curve a little bit smoother. I'll also mention this move vertex. It's in my opinion broken. It stays selected, and you won't be able to do anything else until you middle mouse and deselect it or pick one of the other menus in here. So just be aware of that. But now we're back to where we had the other model. So I should be able to come in and first of all, I want to merge those curves together again. So we'll do that same step. And then we're just going to go in and do our boundary blend again. So first direction, switch over to our second direction. Grab our vertex down here. Do our tangency. Oop. What did I just do there? Okay. Grab this curve by accident. So now you got your patch in there. You can come in and say, I want to, same as before, combine, collapse. And now I've got hopefully all of my problems fixed. Sometimes they're really tiny. It's hard to see them, but I know because I messed around with this model before this call. So I do have those two are the only two problems in this model. I forgot to get rid of my excluded surfaces, which I do all the time. So I temporarily get rid of things in that exclude fashion. And then when I'm done fixing things and I'm comfortable inside the import data doctor, I just go in and delete those excluded things. Okay. And then when you back out here and accept, if it's closed up, you should see it go to a solid. You'll see different line styles. If I go to no hidden, you can see it's a solid model now. One of the other things I do sometimes in a model, if I go back into this one, it's already fixed here, but let me see if I can find an example of this. Let's say, what do I have over here? Okay, I probably could use one of these. All right, so let's say I've got a situation, this happens quite a bit as well, where if I go into the import data doctor and I just come in here and delete this surface, I'm not even going to bother excluding it. I'll just get rid of it altogether. So that happens occasionally. For whatever reason, you go into a model, you import a model, and there's just a surface completely missing. So one of the other things you can do is look for symmetry or that same geometry somewhere else in your model. So for example, that same little tab or boss is over here on this side of the part. So I can leverage that. I can come in and say, I want to take this surface, right click, say copy, paste, and now it's sitting right here, but I can go in and use the transform capabilities, and I can just say, let's take that thing and move it, in this case down here, close to this one. And you'll notice that when I let go and look at my ribbon up here, I'm actually in kind of a insert mode. Let me turn off that dragger. So I've got my new surface that I'm transforming, and I can actually place this using assembly constraints. So I could come in here now and say, take, for example, that vertex and line it up with this one. And in this case, that's all I really need. But, if I had other, if I copied that surface from somewhere else and it had an angle on it like this, I could do additional constraints. So I could say, take this vertex, oops, query through to that again here and align it to here. So I'm actually able to snap that thing into place. Just like before, it's a copy, so it's not part of the original quilt. So I can just pick on both of those, combine, collapse, and now I've got that particular area resolved. So when you have those missing surfaces, or even a surface that's just corrupted and you can't really fix it, you've been trying, you move vertices or do some of those other techniques, look for that same geometry somewhere else in your model, and sometimes you can just copy and paste it in the right location using that transform. All right. So again, I can back out here and it should still be a solid. Okay. So we're about 25 minutes in. Any questions so far? I'm
Hey,
looking at
hey, Mark, there were a couple of questions. Did you get to the one that Mark asked about bringing in geometry from NX
Yep,
Cleaner? He says,
we
are there
talked about
settings?
that one.
You did? Sorry.
Yeah, we covered that one from Mark.
Cool. And
Yep.
the other
There's-
one
Yeah,
on,
there's one from Kyle. Kyle, did you want to ask that question about
yeah,
coordinate
is it
systems?
possible to adjust where the coordinate system is located when bringing in STP step files? Okay.
Yeah,
When we're working with an imported geometry model, the coordinate system appears far off the model. So that's the way the model was exported.
Yeah.
Um,
So your only option there would be, yeah, because that coordinate system is part of the step file.
yeah.
And what we're doing is bringing it in relative to the default step file in Creo.
hmm
What you would have to do in that scenario is, I mean, there might be a couple things you could do. You could bring it in and you could look at using something like flexible modeling to move it, and then
I don't,
delete the coordinate system, or you could bring it in and re-export it relative to a coordinate system that you build on that geometry.
So what I've done is I've been able to like obviously create a new coordinate system and dimension it to the point where like I can adjust it off so I can get it to be centered on that, because then I'll change the reference in the import feature from the standard coordinate system to the new one.
Yep.
But whenever I try to do the export then re-import it, it just automatically goes back to where it was. It continues to keep the older import one. So
So
currently
after
what
you
we
e-
do, we just keep the new coordinate system I make hidden, so that way the standard one is still there.
Yep. Yeah. So if you're going to export it and bring it back in,
Mm-hmm.
what you'd want to do is like if this were the model and my default coordinate system was sitting over here in Creo,
Mm-hmm.
I would create a coordinate system on this part where you want it. So like, just come in here and create a coordinate system. Well, let's do it this way. Let's do an axis through cylinder and then a coordinate system on that, and maybe this face, and come in and say that could be X, and then maybe this direction would be Y, whatever orientation you wanted it. But now I've got a coordinate system here where that's really where I want it to come in.
Yeah.
So now when you go to save it as another step file, or whatever format you want to take it out as, I say save as step. You have to remember to hit this options here.
Okay.
And I lied. You got to remember to hit this customize. And in there, you can say, I want to output it relative instead of the default. I want to output it
Okay.
relative to this guy right here.
Okay, that's a step I missed. All
Yep.
right,
Yep.
Thank you.
And then when you read it back in, it'll come in relative to this.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
You bet. Carmine's got
Hey,
something.
Mark, so, yeah, there was one more on, so Carmine mentioned they made the move from Creo 4 to Creo 7, and notice that our start parts can tend to fail more than if not
Yeah.
using it.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to Mark's question earlier with your start parts probably are using absolute accuracy, and you're probably using a template when you import. So you probably want to, for imported models, start without a template and at least see what the accuracy gets converted to for those models. And then if you want to use a template, I mean, you can always, um, bring in some of your template information after the fact, or if you want, you can come in and, um, change the accuracy import it once, see what accuracy it comes in at, open up your start part and create your template model that you're going to be using and change the accuracy to match whatever it came in at. That's probably maybe the easiest way to do it, Carmine.
Yeah.
In IDD, you can transform the whole geometry and replace it. Oh,
At the default
so,
coordinate system. Yeah.
so Sven is suggesting another approach, I think, to Kyle's question.
Yes.
In IDD, you can is that Kyle or is that Sven on the talking right
No,
now?
that was me.
Oh,
That was me.
okay.
Sorry.
I
I was just reading his
You can
statement.
transform the whole geometry and replace it at the default coordinate system. So I'm not sure what approach he's using there. If he means like, and I don't know, Sven, if you can come off mute, maybe you can explain it a little better than I can. All right. Oh, maybe not. But I think maybe where he's going with that is replace it at the default coordinate system. Yeah, I'm not sure how you would do that, to be honest. So we'll come back to that, I guess. Julie's got one. I have had some luck in past with setting the profile accuracy to external. Yeah, I've done the same thing in the past, but after doing a little digging on it, my understanding is that if you got it set to automatic and you're not using, I guess if you're not using a template and you got it set to automatic, it does the same thing as setting it to external. I think the intention of the external was if you're using a template and you've got accuracy set, that external should override your accuracy in your template. But I haven't had a lot of luck with that. I should try it again. It's something I haven't tried recently. So that was my understanding is if you've got a template model that you're using and you set it to external, it should override what was in the template. So we should try that again. All right. I see Tim came off mute. I don't know if you got a question, Tim, you want to just ask? Or maybe you just came off mute.
So, yeah, sorry, I was going to talk about the transforming.
Oh.
I've done that as well, going into the data doctor and then selecting the whole, you select the whole quill, I believe.
Okay. And do a transform here.
And then go to transform.
And then you go coordinate system to coordinate system.
I've usually haven't done that. Usually my
You could go point to point.
Yeah.
Vertex to vertex.
Yeah.
The move option, the move tab also, if you want to rotate it 90.
Okay.
And like I'll do move, select rotate, select a coordinate system that I want to rotate about. And
okay.
And then you can select 90-degree increments or something else.
Yeah, I think if you had to Bart's point, if you have a vertex out here, you can move it relative to that too. Kind of like what I did with the individual surface. But I don't know, maybe you can. Let me just try something here. So there's my default coordinate system. Not sure how you get to it.
You can, on the tree, you can go to your model.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Model tree.
Yep. Yeah, so I can grab it here too. So I could take this coordinate system, which is part of the import, and grab a coordinate system that's off in space. So that might be a better approach than what I suggested with I think it was Kyle, because you're not exporting, importing, twice. This is doing it on the original file. So that's probably a better approach. All right. Anything else in the chat? Otherwise, I don't know how much time do you need, Tom and Kim? I got one more example I wanted to cover before.
Yeah, taking time.
Okay.
I just need 5 or 10 minutes, and Kim probably needs about 10.
Okay.
Yeah,
10 or
I've
12.
10.
Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So maybe five more minutes, and then I'll switch it over.
Yep, sweet.
All right. So, and this is just an assembly example. So if I go in and grab my other file that I was messing around with or downloaded, I think it was in here. Yeah. So this is again just an assembly step file. Same thing. Went out to GrabCAD, found something that had an issue, bring it in, and because it's an assembly, it was exported as an assembly. It's going to come in as an assembly. It shows 3 import failures, but the way this import validation reports is it actually shows the assembly or subassembly all the way to the top as being problems, when in reality it's really just one part didn't solidify, but because the part didn't solidify, the assembly isn't considered to be a solid, or the subassembly. And then the top level assembly also isn't fully solid. So it shows 3 issues, but it's really just the one part in this case that is the problem. So, and obviously I've still got my background colors set the way I like them, so I can see pretty easily which part it is. The others all came in solid. So I find it's easiest to open up the part and work on it on its own. This one's a super easy one. I just went in and edit the definition, go into the import data doctor, and you can see where the problem area is here. And so you can do things like geomchecks launches this thing called the troubleshooter, which is helpful. That's going to show you some information. In this case, some weird terminology here. I don't know who came up with this, but unsatisfied wireframe is something you might see, or gaps in the model. So identified gaps, that makes sense. And then after you identify a gap or define a gap, you have to add it to the wireframe, which is weird, probably old terminology going back to when solid modeling was built up off of wireframes. But unsatisfied wireframe means that it's been identified to be part of the wireframe, but I have to go in and resolve it. So I can come in here and say, well, first of all, if I just hit repair right now, it's going to look at the entire model, which I wouldn't recommend doing. That's trying to fix things that aren't broken. So I would cancel out of that. And you got a couple of ways you can isolate the repair to just the area you're concerned with. And one is to just go in and say, select that geometry, that unsatisfied wireframe. So I could say, select that problem geometry. And now when I hit repair, it's only going to repair the surfaces that are adjacent to that particular issue. Okay. Another way you can do it is to just manually come in here, select the surfaces that you think it needs, and then hit repair. And now it's only isolating the repair to that area. So it's a couple ways you can kind of get to the isolating the areas that you want repaired, as opposed to just saying, try and fix the whole model. So that's fixed. Accept that, come back here, part solid. If I close out of here, the assembly is solid. Now I still show 2 import failures. That's the subassembly and the top level assembly. It's not smart enough to go back in and resolve those. So you can pick on them and you can go into the report and you can say update. And then it looks at the things below and says, okay, the subassembly is solid. I can resolve that. Same thing at the top level. Actually, if I would have done the top level, it would have fixed the subassembly too. So otherwise, you can just go in and ignore those solidification errors. And then the last thing I want to show is that same assembly, but one of the things you can do now is say this is coming from a supplier and you don't want to manage his assembly and all of its components. You can actually bring it in as a multi-body part. So you end up with a single part with individual bodies. So to do that, you have to go into your data exchange settings. In this case, it's a step file. And then under the topology tab, you can say import those multi-bodies into a single part. And so now when I go in and say open, grab my step file, you'll notice it's set to part now instead of assembly. And I say okay. The other one was still in session, so it's using a new name. But now you'll see it's the same problem, but it came in as 18 bodies, which were parts in the other example, and 1 quilt that needs to be fixed. So that can be handy if you don't want an assembly for that data. You can just bring it in as a single part and then have the parts represented by bodies. So now you have just one single part file to manage as opposed to the entire subassembly. So don't bother fixing it. It's the same problem as the other one. So we're about 20 minutes left, Tom, Kim. I'll turn it over to you guys unless there's any last questions. I don't see anything in the chat, or if anyone wants to come off a mute and ask. All right. Over to you, Tom or Kim, whoever's going to go first.
Thanks, Mark.
Very good. Can you hear me and see my screen now?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I was just going to start by talking a little bit about learn. So there's two topics here. There's the There's the learn, and then there's also the tips and techniques. So the easiest way to get to the learning material is you go to what's called learningconnector.ptc.com. You guys probably, most of you guys probably know this, but just bear with me if there's anything new here. Hopefully, I can bring some of it out here. But learningconnector.ptc.com, and it adds something to the end of that. Probably add like a discovery or something to the end of that. And then once we get into that page, that's really where everything is accessible with regards to the learn. It's called the Learning Connector. So they have this information down here, the instructor-led classes, the self-guided classes, the certifications. All three of these are accessible from each one of these catalogs. So I typically don't go in through here. Now, what is pretty valuable is these playlists. So you have tutorials, and then you have groupings of tutorials in playlists. So they're curated in such a way that if you're a new user, you would want to learn, a whole bunch of tutorials together on how to get started, or how to do 2D drawings, or how to do simulation for the first time. That's where the playlists come in handy. Now, all of these trainings are for customers that do not have access to the subscription learn or the enterprise learn. So a lot of our larger customers, they are going towards the enterprise learn model. So think about it as a floating access to learn for the entire organization, for the entire company. When we first started selling learn, it was only named user, and everyone kept asking for floating. Well, that's what the enterprise learn is now. So if you looked at the tutorials, what's in the tutorials itself. Now, the first place I think where the benefits can be felt for the tutorials is in the what's new. So if you pick a topic, say like career parametric, and then you click this little button right here, that's supposed to be a box, an open box. And if you click on that, that's saying open this new box to see what's new. And then you can funnel down the version of product that you're going to. So for instance, like if you were going from 4 to 7, you could highlight all of the functionality that's new in 5, 6, and 7, and it would list all of the new functionality for all of the products. And then if you drill down deeper and you went into, say, I don't know, maybe just basic modeling. So there's now 31 tutorials in those areas, and you can drill down a little bit deeper. And you can, of course, you can go further down into say, I don't know, in Sketcher. So there's only 4 things that are new in the Sketcher, going from 4 to 7. And then, obviously you can go up higher than that. You can say, actually turning off that one. And then you could come back and say, if I was going to move to, say, 11, and I want to see what's new in 10, 9, and 8, and I'm moving from 7. So I'd turn off all the things before that. So the multiple versions is easy to see, and I can easily get an idea of what's new in that particular release. As I mentioned earlier, so if we go back to the playlist, so you can also access playlists up here, and then not the what's new, but all the playlists. So if you said you want to see some of these in, say, modeling, or any of these that are showing up with the modeling and the sketching, you say, oh, okay, so getting started with Creo parametric modeling. If you clicked in there, this would walk you through a whole bunch of different tutorials as if you were new to the product. Okay, so this, if you don't have access to the learn, the instructor-led learn, then this is the next best thing. Now, the only downside is it doesn't come with files. So you're gonna have to use your own files to make it look like some of the parts that they're dealing with, so that you can try it out on your own. And the way the Learning Connector was originally meant to work, it was meant to work with with you as you were working. So you were meant to really have a part on the screen that you could start working with. Right. So that's the learn that that I was just the tutorials. Now going back to the learning connector. So we just went back to here, the learning connector, and we'll see what going into the catalogs. So as I mentioned before, so that you've got the tutorials and you've got the playlists, which are groups of tutorials. And then these three, I don't really use them all that much. I come back to here and I go to say, if I want to learn something about Creo, then I go to the Creo catalog. And then this has all of the courses that are listed, and you can gain information about each course by looking at the little eye with the circle around it. And by the way, these tell me that they're self-guided versus instructor-led, or in addition to instructor-led. So the self-guided and the instructor-led are really the exact same courses and the material and everything, and you access Creo the same way, but you don't have an instructor. So what I've heard is you can actually go almost twice as fast without an instructor, because the instructor has to slow down everything for the slowest person in the room, unless you're slow and then you want to take your time. That's fine too. But the self-guided, they still last for 3 hours long. You still get an image, a virtual image for Creo with the files and everything on it. And you run Creo in a browser, and you don't need to own that version of product that you want to take training on. And you also don't need to own the product that you want to try out. So like if someone wanted to learn about generative, they could go into under the manufacturing and say, okay, I want to learn about generative topology optimization. So you can go in here and say, open the link. And this one is only offered with an instructor. And then you could see, okay, here's the course overview, here's the learning objectives. And I could find a class. So I go in here and I say, okay, when's the next class that's available for this? And so the next class is the 22nd, 9 a.m. It's given in English, because there's multiple languages here also. And there's 4 seats remaining. And if I click on enroll, then it would actually enroll me in the class. It'll send me a link to log in, to Creo using AWS, the cloud, opening it in a browser. It would also give me a guide that I'll have for a year that I can look at even after the class, but still no parts though, unfortunately. It's just not laid out that way. And then when you enroll in the class and you attend that day, you have 2 screens, typically 2 monitors. You'll have one to pick and click in your Creo browser, and then you will have the other screen to watch the instructor. And of course, you can talk to the instructor during the class. Now, the way the self-paced works is you just don't get an instructor. You would still want to have 2 monitors. You would put the training material, the PDF file for the instructions, the step-by-step instructions on the one screen, and then you'll go through the picks and clicks on your other screen. But it still takes about the same time. You might get through it a bit quicker without the instructor, but you don't get to ask questions either. The self-guided is available 24/7. So 3 o'clock in the morning, I can say, hey, I want to take this class, and you can sign up, get a AWS link, get the PDF, and take whatever material you want in at 3 o'clock in the morning. You don't need to go along a given schedule. Okay. So that's all the learn I was going to bring up. Now, the tips and techniques. This is a library. It's really a treasure chest of 1 hour long tutorials that people like Mark, myself, Tazi, and others, all the application engineers, we put together a ton of content here that's accessible. It's wide open. Okay, there's not a login of any kind. You can pass it off to anybody else if you want. And you just basically click on these. And so I want to learn about Simulation Live. I just click on this original. So we did this back in, when did we first do this? I think it was back in 2021. We did this way back when. And you know, it's an hour-long video, and you can follow along and watch the video, and works out really well to learn the product for the first time. It's positioning, it's understanding who was using it. You'll get to listen to the questions that any customer asked when they joined the tip and technique session. And you know, it's been great to have this library that anytime a customer asks me and say, hey, can I get a demo of this product? And I want to learn about tolerance analysis and the GD&T advisor. You know, I point them to the tutorial and they watch it and they say, hey, that's really all I needed. So 1 hour at any time, it's available 24/7 also. You can go through and get a nice, it's better than high level. It's kind of mid-level as far as use. And then, you know, if you want to take the training class after that too. So we've tried to include the Learn Online course material as well as other tutorials along with these. Okay, so I'll drop this into the chat when Kim starts talking. Are there any other questions? Any questions that popped up? Mark, can you tell? I can't really see.
Nope, nothing in the chat.
Nope. Okay, good. So on that, Kim, I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna pass it over to you.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, you bet.
Just 1 second. Trying to make this a little bit bigger. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, and it's full screen now.
Perfect. So switching gears a little bit here. So first off, Kim Long, I'm a senior director in strategy here at PTC and leading our education programs. And I wanted to talk a little bit about our education commercial grant program. And essentially, I think what we've been hearing from some of our customers, and if that's your case too, like feel free to reach out, is the importance and sometimes the difficulty in finding people who are skilled and knowledgeable in Creo and other software that PTC provides. And so essentially, this program is really to enable our customers to subsidize software to schools that they hire from and provide discounted education licenses to universities. And really, the idea here is twofold. One is, again, helping our customers to find the right students that know how to use our software. And for us, PTC is also really growing this this brand awareness around faculty and university. Eventually, that really is our strategy to kind of build this relationship between not just PTC and their customers and PTC and schools, but really kind of bringing that all together and helping, you know, foster a little bit more the relationships and create a more coherent community and helping kind of on the internship and co-ops and scholarship side of things in general. So we allow kind of companies to really help those universities to afford those software and by providing that at a significant discount. So we have a few, obviously, as you're aware, a few software that are available for different universities. I'm not going to go into this. And then the second piece of what I wanted to talk to you guys about is we actually do have, as you might be aware, a free version of Creo for our university students and educators. So any students that would want to be able to kind of start using it and learn about it is able to actually have access to free Creo software. And then in the same vein, so we actually do have a free Creo certification program really for students so that they can actually show that they are they have the Creo skill set and hopefully be identifiable by our customers, talent acquisitions teams, so that they know that the student particularly is able to masters Creo skills and is a good candidate for what we're trying to solve for. So that's really kind of what I wanted to talk to you about. If there's any questions, if there are any requests, feel free to reach out. Would be very happy to help on that front.
Hi, Kim. This is Bart. I have a quick question. Who's the contact person to help a university get set up with Creo? In the past, I would tell, a physicist or a professor that they could get free Creo, and they often give up.
Oh, okay. Well, feel free to send them to me.
Okay.
And the team can actually help set them up, etc. So
Can you put your email address in the
the
chat?
link. Yes,
Thank you.
I'll do that. Any other?
I think, to Kim's point, the disconnect has always been our customer base. So the university channels always talk to the universities, and we always talk to the customers. The customers always complain that they can't hire people out of school that have Creo experience, but there's no way to really connect the customer to the schools, and the schools don't know what the customers want. The schools just teach what they know and what they're comfortable with, and what they have a curriculum for. So what we're trying to do is bridge that gap and explain to the universities that there is a need in certain areas for certain products, geographies, especially in your area. There's a high concentration of large Creo customers that are hiring in that area. And so it would be nice if we can get the customers speaking with the universities. And in a perfect world, like, we would literally go into the table, the university professor or someone from the faculty, the customer, you guys, and one of us, and talk it out and figure out the best way to create a supply of users from the schools to the customers themselves. I mean, if you look at any sports programs, it's always going back before, the high school programs, college programs. It's always early on. You want to get to people, and we have many ways of working with people now at the K through 12, as well as the high schools and the colleges. Okay. All right. So Deb, thanks for having us, by the way. If
Thank you
anyone
guys
wants,
I had a really quick question
Sure.
about to Kim. So BadgerUG User Group has been supporting MATC, Milwaukee Area Technical College. So it's a tech school here in town. They've been teaching Creo. Would they be able to qualify for this, or if they already have Creo, then they can't? Just kind of let me know about that. Would this be a way for them to save money?
So again, what we're trying to do is bring the customer and the university. So in this context, I think if we could, if there's a customer that's willing to kind of sponsor this, we could be working with them. But Deborah, I think feel free to kind of let's touch base offline
Sure.
and we can do.
Yeah. We can talk offline.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you guys so much. We're running, we got like 1 minute left, and I wanted to end at 12:55, but thanks to everyone.